Greece starts clearing thousands of migrants from the deplorable conditions at the Idomeni border camp. Combating the global dangers of prescription drug abuse. And how a mom in a Chewbacca mask broke the internet. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. There is a new development in the European migrant crisis. The evacuation of an informal refugee camp began at dawn Tuesday in Greece. The United Nations Refugee Agency urged Greece to refrain from using force during the transfer of the more than 8,000 migrants and refugees. At least 400 police officers were sent into the camp, which houses about 8,400 people. Greek authorities had assured that no force will be used in evacuating refugees. Some of these, mostly Syrian, Afghan and Iraqi refugees, have complied with authorities in hopes that the move to formal camps will offer them better living conditions. But at least one female refugee was reluctant to board the buses.
Go Thessaloniki. Police, no good. Money, Massa, no good. Germany, Serbia, Yunan, no good.
What is different about this evacuation from smaller ones attempted in recent months is that Greek authorities have confirmed the locations of 9 camps around Thessalonica, so migrants know where they are going and the new camps are prepared to accommodate them. The Idomeni camp, an informal settlement that sprang up at a pedestrian crossing between Macedonia and Greece, reached a peak of near 12,000 residents when Macedonia closed its borders in March. Since then, Greece has seen a dramatic upswing in the already persistent problem of homeless refugees, prompting authorities to urge the Idomeni migrants to relocate to the established camps. But few migrants seek asylum in Greece, hoping instead to reach the strong economies of Germany or Sweden. The European Union has not offered financial support for new official refugee camps in Greece, but it has repeatedly stated it is aware of the problem. Well, for the latest on the refugee relocations, journalist Maria Kakelidou joins me live via Skype from Athens. Maria, welcome.
Hello there, Vincent.
Yes. Now, what has been the reaction in Athens to these relocations today?
Well, we haven't had official reaction. We've had official reaction from the European Union yesterday, which said that this was a welcome move, but they expect that officials here are fairly happy with how this operation has gone ahead so far. They've managed to move more than 1,000 people. There were certainly no riots, and a lot of the people actually boarded voluntarily. Actually, even in the previous days, we've seen people kind of making up their minds that that was it. There was no future staying there, that, you know, after having gone through a very, very difficult winter, these people have been there now for over 3 months. Now a very, very hot summer is on its way. So we've seen hundreds of people leaving the camp in the previous few days as well. And today over 1,000, as I said, leaving, with no real incident.
Now, we know that this is just moving them from one terrible location to better camps, but that's not the end game. What is supposed to happen eventually?
Well, it is very hard to say what is going to happen to these people. There were this morning over 8,000 people in Idomeni and around another 40,000 throughout Greece who are not part of this latest EU-Turkey deal that came in force on March 20th. This means they arrived earlier, and as a result, if they file an asylum application and this gets rejected, they don't automatically get returned to Turkey as everybody that arrived later. At the same time, the route north, which is where these people want to go, they want to go to North and Northwestern Europe, countries like Germany and Austria and Sweden. The route north is blocked, so they can't move forward and they certainly can't go back. Their only hope, I would say, would be the EU's relocation program. Now, the European Union promised Greece that it would relocate tens of thousands of refugees, but so far it's only relocated a few hundreds of them. Yep. So whatever the case may be, it's looking very, very hard.
Maria, very quickly, what has been the obstacle here? Why is the European Union not moving more people?
there are a great number of countries in the EU that want to have nothing to do with this relocation. Countries like Hungary, countries like Austria, which has dramatically reduced the number of asylum applications it will receive. Immigration is a very, very hot subject in Europe, and Europeans don't seem to want more people coming in from Muslim countries mainly, essentially settling in their countries. We've seen the rise of the right-wing parties throughout Europe. This week, Austria narrowly escaped having a very, very far right-wing candidate. And I think there's generally a lot of opposition by European populations and politicians.
Thank you, Maria. Really tough for Greece. Maria, thanks for your reporting there. Journalist Maria Kakledou reporting live via Skype from Athens. Now, global leaders met for the second and final day in Istanbul Tuesday at a United Nations summit aimed at correcting what officials call a broken humanitarian system that has left 130 million people in need of aid. Billed as the first of its kind, leaders discussed how to mobilize more funds and agree to better care for displaced civilians. Critics, however, say the global aid system has been overwhelmed by a proliferation of regional wars and failed states that have ballooned refugee numbers. They also cite poor governance and corruption in recipient countries that consume some humanitarian funds before they can benefit those in need. Now for the latest on the summit in Turkey, journalist Kimberly Curtis joins me live via Skype from Istanbul. Good evening, Kimberly.
Good evening.
Now give us some highlights from this final day of the summit.
Right. Well, yesterday was a lot about financing and funding and finding a way to actually pay for all the services that are needed with these humanitarian emergencies. Today was the more difficult conversation about how to find political solutions to wrap up these emergencies so they no longer exist and hopefully prevent new ones from popping up around the world.
So in terms of solutions, what are leaders saying? What have they resolved to do?
Well, the Secretary General of the International Committee of the Red Cross summed it up nicely when he said that the summit was designed for political discussions, but not political decision making. So there's a lot of things being said, but nothing concrete, nothing that will actually, get things moving. It's important to note that out of the 60 heads of state that are here, President Barack Obama and Russian President Vladimir Putin are absent. And those are two states that you definitely want involved in any conversation when it comes to political solutions, especially in places like Syria and Iraq.
So, because this was just talking, did they suggest perhaps a follow-up where they may come up with some solutions?
Basically, everyone, in terms of the migrant crisis, everyone's pointing to the high-level summit ahead of the opening of the UN General Assembly that's coming up in September. So that's more of a Security Council. That's where everyone will be present, where heads of state will be present, and hopefully more concrete action can occur. But when it comes to actually finding peace in a place like Syria, there's not much progress or anything to go on based off of the discussions here.
Very quickly, and only if you noticed this, was there a significant African presence and contribution to this discussion?
I noticed a lot of African countries did send delegations. However, most of the ones that I noticed weren't extremely high-level delegations. I know that, for example, the Prime Minister of Uganda was here, but the President of Uganda was not. Things like that. So while Africans have been involved in many of the discussions, especially involving how to get women more involved in the peace process, which is something that Africa has done very well in the past in certain countries, it's not necessarily the representation that you would wish to see at a summit like this.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Kimberly.
Thank you.
Well, Kimberly Curtis reporting live via Skype from Istanbul. Now, U.S. President Barack Obama continued his visit to Vietnam Tuesday, touching on economic development and human rights, arguing that the two often go hand in hand. Africa 54's Estigizou Yuwat reports.
Earlier Tuesday, Obama met with 6 Vietnamese civil society members, saying there are significant areas of concern about political freedom, and he praised those Vietnamese willing to make their voices heard. The U.S. president maintained progress in basic human rights can lead to economic progress.
It's very hard to prosper in this modern economy if you haven't fully unleashed the potential of your people. and your people's potential in part derives from their ability to express themselves and express new ideas, to try to right wrongs that are taking place in the society. And so it's my hope that increasingly the Vietnamese government, seeing the enormous strides that the country is making, has more confidence that its people want to work together, but also want to be able to assemble and participate in the society in ways that will be good for everybody in the long run.
Later Tuesday, Obama gave a wide-ranging address at Hanoi's National Convention Center at a gathering of more than 2,000 people, including some Vietnamese government officials, and he continued to touch on the very sensitive topic of human rights.
When there's freedom of the press, when journalists and bloggers are able to shine a light on injustice or abuse, that holds officials accountable and builds public confidence that the system works.
Obama noted that there were several other activists who were invited who were prevented from coming for various reasons. For the non-governmental organization Human Rights Watch, the president's remarks and the joint statement in Hanoi do not go far enough. Human Rights Watch Asia Deputy Director Phil Robertson said the president's remarks did not go far enough and challenged Obama's characterization that there has been modest human rights progress in Vietnam, saying there has been little or no progress. Astigithu Ewart, VOA News.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa54 and check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince Makori. Coming up, the dangers of opioid drug addiction. Stay with us.
I wanted to present music and a side of American culture that is most important to me, that is a part of who I am. They're going to get some incredible performances. That's one of the things I love, bringing these artists in so you can get to see them do what they do. It's soul music, and that's what music is. It's that which comes from the soul.
Welcome back. Now, many Zimbabwean farmers are lamenting the effects of El Nino. However, one farmer from the most arid region is expecting a bumper harvest, the best she has had in years. Now, the envy of our peers in our community, she shares her experiences with reporter Cesar Mukadini on how she managed to be a drought-resistant farmer this season.
My name is Ivy Sibanda. I'm from Wanget district, farming in the dry regions. This is the kind of sand we have here, not really for farming. As you can see, this sand is loose sand. It needs a lot of feeding.
Because of climate change, we saw that farming short variety crops was ideal since we're in a dry region, and it would help combat hunger in our family. I can even testify that this time we've harvested so much more than all other seasons. They say there is a severe drought in our country, but as for me and my family, we are safe. We've harvested so much more because we followed conservation farming practices.
2015-16 agric season was one of the worst that Zimbabwe has experienced due to the El Nino-induced drought. So for us as Environment Africa, we're working in partnership with Agritechs, working with farmers to promote climate-smart technologies such as conservation agriculture, which helps farmers adapt to climate change in their communities. So for us, Ivy Sibanda and her story is one of those that you look at and say that, okay, farmers with the right kind of support, with the right kind of trainings and partnership and assistance from the technical departments, they can better adapt to climate change. We look at Ivy, we look at the area that she put under crop, we look at her harvest, which is projected to be in excess of 1 metric ton for this season. Then we know that in terms of food security for this year, she is safe, unlike other farmers that did not practice conservation agriculture.
Now, as for my peers, I'm trying to teach them about conservation agriculture through field days and sharing my knowledge. We share about what climate change is and what farmers should do to ensure food security for themselves and their families. We should no longer plant long variety crops because they don't do well. And because of the harvest they have seen me produce, they want to try the same next season.
What I encourage other farmers in Zimbabwe and in our region is that they shouldn't lose heart in farming. It's like a game. Sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. They need to use drought-resistant seeds that will thrive even in such conditions. Sometimes you plant early and the rains fail, like we did. But we did not lose heart. We plowed again when the rains came and we harvested.
We see them contributing in the building of their families, their children. As we have seen, she's able to have food. And when we're talking about food, it's a diverse food package that she has. You talk of your cereals, you talk of your pulses, the beans, the cowpeas that she has, the round nuts, and she also has a bit of the ground nuts. She also has the melons. She's able to provide food, and she can provide food for her family at least 3 times a day.
Well, that was reporter Vincent Makori reporting from Zimbabwe. Well, it's time now for our health report, and joining us is Africa 54 health correspondent Leno Madu with news on fighting infectious diseases. Leno.
The World Health Organization says the rise of infectious diseases and a series of slow-moving man-made disasters are among the most urgent challenges that must be addressed in today's health landscape. Speaking at the 69th World Health Assembly, Dr. Margaret Chan says in Geneva Monday, she urged for stronger health systems. She says the global response to Ebola was a failure not to be repeated. Dr. Chan congratulated delegates on critical victories over the past year, including progress made on polio eradication and anti-tobacco measures, like the UK's recent plain packaging legislation for tobacco. She also warned against profit-oriented policies that put lives in danger, creating slow-motion disasters.
As the international community enters the era of sustainable development, the global health landscape is being shaped by 3 slow-motion disasters: a changing climate, the failure of more and more mainstay antibiotics, antimicrobials, and the rise of chronic non-communicable diseases as the leading killers worldwide. These are not natural disasters. They are man-made disasters, created by policies that put economic interests above concerns about the well-being of human lives and the planet that sustains them.
Now, U.S. health officials say the abuse of opioids, a class of drugs that include heroin and prescription painkillers, is a serious concern. They can lead to a variety of adverse health effects, including addiction. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says that opioids were involved in more than 28,000 deaths in 2014 in the United States. Observers say the abuse of pharmaceuticals has grown to be a major cause for concern across the globe. According to the International Narcotics Control Board, prescription drugs as a category moved up to 2nd on the list of the most abused and trafficked types of drugs in the world. The most common types of medications abused globally were opioids, depressants, and stimulants, according to the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. Joining us now is Dr. George Kolodner, founder and medical director of the Colmac Outpatient Recovery Centers here in the United States. Dr. Kolodner, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So prescription drug abuse, some people say it is an epidemic in the United States. What is the scope of the problem?
It's a serious problem affecting most of the states in the country, with some specific states, rural states, very severely affected. The good news is that I think there's progress in managing it, and it doesn't seem to be getting worse in the way it was over the past 10 years.
And globally, it seems also that the problem is increasing. You've seen patients coming from overseas to your clinics.
Some patients, we've seen governments come and bring delegations of doctors to look at our treatment methods, to use, particularly for heroin.
That's interesting. Now, when it comes to this issue, some people are blaming the patients, but the doctors also are being blamed.
Absolutely. These prescriptions, the pain pills, were prescribed by doctors, and there's evidence that doctors became less careful about their use since the 1990s than they had been before that.
But there have been cases where patients are asking the doctors, I need it, I want it. What is the doctor to do?
The doctor should educate the patient, not simply give the patient everything they want, but give them what the doctor thinks is a good measured balance between risks and benefits. And therefore, when it comes to particularly chronic pain, there are many alternatives to opioids.
Alternatives such as?
There are different kinds of non-pharmaceutical interventions, physical interventions. There's looking at the psychological aspects of this. And there's also managing expectations. If you tell people to expect zero pain, you get into much more complications trying to get down to that level, when people can live with low to moderate levels of pain and not get the kind of complications that you can when you try to eliminate it with opioids.
Some people take prescription drugs and don't get addicted. Other people do. Where is the line? How do some people go from just managing pain to becoming addicted?
Well, that's part of the problem, is that we can't predict who is going to become addicted to these and who is not. There's some indications if you have another addiction, then you're more prone. But because we don't know who's going to become addicted, doctors should be very cautious and use opioids not as necessarily as a first resort, but as a second or third resort when others don't succeed.
And quickly, what does it entail to address this issue? For example, in your center, what do you do?
What we do is, number one, we work on an outpatient basis. So there's a lot of focus on inpatient treatment, which can work, but it's much more expensive and much less accessible than outpatient treatment. We work particularly with people who have jobs. 75% of people who are addicted have jobs, and to have a treatment program that allows them to continue to work has great benefits.
Okay. All right, Dr. Kolodner, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
And that was Dr. George Kolodner. He is founder and medical director of the Colmac Outpatient Recovery Centers. Now, that's our health report for today. To stay in touch, well, find me on Twitter @LenorMoudou. Vincent?
Well, Lenore, thanks a lot, and be sure to watch Lenore Moudou's health report every Tuesday and Thursday right here on Africa 54. It's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, how a mom in a Chewbacca mask became an overnight internet star. We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. In Kenya, at least 3 people are dead after violence erupted between police and protesters against Nairobi's Electoral Commission. We stay in Kenya, where the country has formally announced that it will close the world's largest refugee camp this year because of security concerns. In South Africa, the Navy detains 3 Chinese ships on suspicion of illegal squid fishing. Finally, in Malawi, Chief Teresa Kachindamoto is seen as idol for girls in the country because of her courage in breaking up more than 850 child marriages. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending.
I wanted to share with you something I got.
Well, Dallas area mom Candy Spain has had the internet in absolute hysterics with more than a whooping 135 million views on her Facebook Live video, simply trying on a Chewbacca toy mask in a parking lot. Her obvious delight at the birthday gift to herself had social media not only tuning in, but loving the video so much, Payne has now spiraled into viral stardom. Superstardom. Now, the new viral star mentioned in her video that she got the mask at U.S. retail giant Kohl's. The mention helped the mask sell out online and gave a big boost in sales. Representatives for Kohl's showed up at Candace's house to give her more masks for her kids and husband, plenty of other Star Wars merchandise, and a $2,500 in gift cards. Next up, sunglasses made of wood are a fashion trend that has appeared in recent years. A Tunisian startup that is the first in the country to produce wooden glasses is now exporting its frames around the world. 2 years after its launch in 2014, VK now has 11 employees and plans to double its workforce by the end of the year. The frames are sold in France, Canada, Morocco, Austria, and Bulgaria. The company is due to add 5 new countries to the list in the coming year. From a plywood prototype to luxurious African wood species, the glasses have been a success from the beginning. Each new sale allows the team to buy more raw material and new tools to perfect their production. Well, and finally, previously unseen artworks by superstar street artist Banksy are on display in Rome. The unique exhibit, called War, Capitalism and Liberty, runs from May 24th through September the 4th, 2016. The show features more than 120 artworks from throughout Banksy's career. It's made up of several works taken from private international collections, which look at socio and political events through the irreverent artistic eye of the author. Now, according to the curators, some of the works have never been seen in public before. Items on show include flower thrower and root copper to the girl with TV and golf cells. And that is what is trending today. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com for more news. Tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight, at 1800 UTC. And in the mornings today, Break Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching from all of us in Washington. Have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. We all have our own ways of waking up in the morning. But is this expression really about waking up in the morning?
Wake up call.
I can't believe my roommate.
Why? What's up?
She buys everything with her credit card. She's already $20,000 in debt.
Ouch. Living off credit is a bad idea. She needs a wake-up call.
A wake-up call is something that makes you wake up to a bad reality, like a huge credit card bill. But this expression can also mean an actual wake-up call at a hotel. Next time you travel, you can ask for a wake-up call, or if a friend is not facing reality, you can give them a wake-up call. And that's English in a Minute.